In November 2019, Diablo 4 was announced, 7 years after the release of Diablo 3, which in turn was released after a long period of almost 10 years since the franchise's last game, Diablo 2: Lord of Destruction. It might seem strange to think that such a large and well-made cinematic was done long before the game, but this has been Blizzard's normal behavior. By the end of 2019, the cinematic was on YouTube. However, the official release of Diablo 4 only happened in June 2023, 4 years later. Is this a problem? Well, I don't know about you, but I spent all this time looking for news about the game's development, but this information was somewhat scarce, including about the possible release date. That increased my hype. And finally, the day arrived. June 5th was the official release. Game launched, hundreds of thousands of players venturing to defeat the forces of hell. But the biggest enemy was yet to come. Server disconnects. If you've ever participated in a Blizzard launch, you know that the chances of playing in the first hours are minimal, plus there could be a rollback that erases all your progress. Yes, that happened to me. Okay, weeks passed. The game stabilized, maybe through fixes, maybe through the quitting of other players. It's time to get strong. But in fact, my progress will soon be lost because about 45 days after the release, the first season is announced, where we all start the progress over. At least part of it. Fear not, if I did it once, I can do it again. I created my new character and started getting strong after a few weeks. After all, work, studies, social life, and other hobbies are important to fight evil too. Oh no, Season 2 has been announced. Will I ever get strong? Will I ever be one of the top players on the server? I guess I took too long to think. Because Season 3 has also been announced? Well, maybe it's not your case. Maybe you can be the top player of the season. But for the glaring majority, the feeling of being too far behind is dominant. As I was recording this video, Season 4 was announced. In summary, what will be different this time? Itemization. We will have fewer affixes, but more relevant ones, and some new ones. Crafting items will be stronger. Unique items will be found earlier. New crafting system. Tempering. Now you can add affixes to your items, like in Diablo 3. It's possible to re-roll a little. We will also have a new item crafting system, Masterworking, Helltide, with some changes to increase difficulty over time. Accursed Rituals, apparently an event that requires an item to activate. Balancing in difficulties 1 and 2. And, probably the core of the season, the Pit of Artificers. They are basically Diablo 3 rifts, where you have a time to defeat enemies and have a chance to defeat a boss at the end. Well, of course, this is just a superficial view of what will happen, and that there are probably many people thinking about the best design to provide us with a lot of fun. But is it worth your money to have experiences similar to previous games? And if you already have Diablo 4 purchased, is it worth your time? My answer is, as you can imagine, no. And I'll explain my reasons. I can't believe that all these features started to be developed at the end of the previous season. This applies to all seasons. The impression is that of a game that was planned to have all these features, but to keep the hype they delayed the release of parts of the game. After all, if you pay a lot for something, you expect it to be good. And if it's not, but every 3 months the seller delivers a new promise, the tendency is that we give it a new chance. This is a natural reaction of our brain, and maybe someone has used it to keep us in the game. Now, let's imagine that all of this is a coincidence, and that really the features are being developed gradually to improve. How much are you willing to play a version of the game that in a few months will no longer be the same? Is it interesting to play a different version of the same game, but how much time do you invest to learn a mechanic that will no longer be useful? Will this not make it increasingly difficult to keep up with players who can stay playing much longer than you? Today, we have a stable version of Diablo 3, where players know what they need to do to progress. Is it repetitive? Yes, but isn't it better that the repetitive part be continuous? If from time to time your learning becomes invalid, you need to chase after it again. But, Dan, all of this sounds cool. All of this makes me want to play because it's a novelty. I like the idea of playing a different version of the same game. Well, if this works for you, there's nothing wrong with that. We're not talking about an exact science. But don't forget, the goal of any activity, especially games, is to make you have fun. If you're getting frustrated and feeling like you're wasting time, maybe it's time to look for a new game, with more timeless rewards, and that values your effort. And you, are you going to play Season 4? What do you expect? Comment here.